has done exactly that. And on today's episode, we're going to share the secrets behind what he's done. And by the way, it's not what you think. Sometimes you think that to sell at that level, you have to be very salesy. I'll tell you, I've known this gentleman. He's become a very dear friend of mine. He is not salesy at all. In fact, his new book coming out, Teach to Sell, is going to give you the secrets behind that. So today's episode is all about how you can teach to sell and absolutely hit it out of the park. Stay with us. This episode is going to be fire. So the big question is this: how do those of us in the real estate industry who have crazy amounts of ambition, how do we think bigger than the building of our own empires? How do we create success and significance, income and impact? My name is Justin Stoddard. This is my co-host Stephanie Peck. And together we bring you the Think Bigger Real Estate Podcast. All right, welcome back, my friends. I'm so excited to introduce to you my very good friend, Dan Rochon. He is an absolute stallion when it comes to selling real estate. And now his fame is spreading beyond just real estate to where he's really bringing his tactics, his strategies to a much wider audience. Dan, always such a pleasure to spend time with you, my friend. Welcome to the Think Bigger Real Estate Podcast.
Thank you, Justin. Good to see you, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Dan and I became friends when I was launching my first book, The Upstream Model. He was on my podcast. It's been some time ago since he was here. So I'm pretty excited to have you back, Dan. And let's dive right in. This book that you're getting ready to release, Teach to Sell, I want to ask you maybe what inspired you, right? I mean, sometimes people are kind of like cards close to chest when it comes to, when it comes to their secrets, especially when you're, producing at the level that you have. But what inspired you to write Teach to Sell? And maybe even a better question is like, what gap did you see in how sales is typically taught that you feel like, you know what, this is really where I feel like it's missing and where people need to see things slightly differently?
Let me, if I can, break that into two questions, right? Because you mentioned about keeping our secrets guarded. And I want to comment on that, and then I'll answer the question that you got to, which is, what is the gap? And I remember I got my real estate license in 2007. And when I got my license, it was doom and gloom. It was, there was this old-fashioned thing. Your listeners, your audience can Google it. It's called the newspaper. And in that newspaper, there was nothing but headlines that said the sky is falling, worst economic times ever, and at the time I was waiting tables, and I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I wanted to be a salesperson, I just didn't know how. I was recently recovered in my sobriety. I was from the age of 13, alcohol became my escape until it became my cage in my early 30s, and a dozen beers and 2 bottles of wine every day was the norm. It was the daily routine, and so I made a lot of changes early on. And I remember my broker, Karen, my first broker, coming up to me, and I was licensed for maybe 4 months. And by this time, I was already sharing my quote unquote secrets, which is what you had mentioned there. And I remember looking at Karen, because Karen's like, Dan, why are you telling everybody what you're doing? Why are you sharing this with everybody? I looked at her, I said, Karen, two things. Number one is the majority of the people that I share this with will never do anything with it. Number two, the people who do the things that I'm sharing, and this is going back 20 years, right? That I was talking about like my listing presentation as a real estate agent, those types of things, and all my secrets of how I got business. And I said, so the majority of people I share this with, they're not going to do anything with it. The people who are going to do something with it, they're going to do it with or without me. So my philosophy was, I'm either helping people or, outreaching to people with the intention to help them that aren't going to receive it, or I'm helping people who are going to be successful with or without me. And so it allowed for me to understand that if I can create a relationship with people that are going to be successful anyways and be able to help them, then it's likely that they're going to be able to help me back. And so that's the first piece of what you shared with me. And then that lays right in perfectly into where's the gap. The gap is that most people try to convince. but convincing doesn't work. The real power is in guiding others for them to see the best path for themselves so that they can be able to achieve the goals, aspirations, remove the obstacles, get the dreams that they're passionate about, receiving. And so about maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I got into like this understanding to say, one of my coaches was asking me, Dan, what have you done that is replicatable? And what I realized, it was the first time I really was able to put it into words, was I was teaching to sell. And that's where I came with the understanding to say, like, I've done this from day one, where it's like I'm going to teach to sell, which meaning that it's about understanding how people perceive the world through their lens, through their circumstance, and then helping them to think so that they can get what they want. And that was the beginning of Teach to Sell for me.
It definitely is a different paradigm shift, and I think you say it really well in your book. And again, folks, I've got the early manuscript. I feel super fortunate. By the way, at the end of this episode, we're going to give a link to where you can get on the pre-order list, which Dan's going to delight you up until the time of the book release coming up in the spring with some additional nuggets to help you get started down that journey to where you don't have to wait until spring. I think after this, everyone's going to be like, please send it to me now. and you're going to be in Dan's world, and he's going to be able to kind of feed you some things that are going to get you started on this path even prior to the book releasing. But, you write early on in the book that selling isn't about getting, it's about giving. Can you unpack that shift? I mean, and let me preface it by this way. I think a lot of real estate agents get into the business because they have a heart, like the heart of a teacher, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's a Dave Ramsey quote. And yet they get into the industry and look around and they see these people on calls, and they're just blowing through people that are frustrated, that are upset. And I'm not saying that calling people is bad in any way, shape, or form, but I will say that it has a lot of the training that real estate agents face is you kind of got to eat some glass, right? And you've got to get up and you got to like really have the mindset. I'm here to get listings. Like I'm here to I'm going to stake my claim, even if I upset a whole bunch of people. And I feel like, and knowing you and your heart, that you do have a heart of a teacher, is that you've not settled for the salary of a teacher in real estate, right? You've really hit the highest levels, yet been able to maintain that heart of who you are. And I think that's super enviable. Like, a lot of people want that. They come into real estate because they want to make great money and have great freedom, but they don't want to be salesy, right? They want to continue to be that teacher. Walk us through what that paradigm shift can look like for people to realize that they can have it all, that they don't have to be one or the other, right? Successful or have a big heart and be a teacher.
Yeah, well, first of all, success is a perception. And so anytime that you hear me share the word success, particularly when it comes to myself, but also for others, I always use the word perceived before the word success. And so, and I say that because, a lot of times particularly with social media, with, the way that the world has changed over the last 20 years, we judge each other's outsides. We judge our insides based off of other people's outsides, right? So we look at this perception of Justin Stoddard is successful, and you are successful. Yet, what makes Justin successful? Is it his business acumen? Is it the fact that he is a father of 6 or 5? 5.
6. Yeah. 6.
Of 6 beautiful children. And I know that and being a husband is a large part of your identity and a large part of your perceived success. But here's the thing. I'm not at the dinner table. I'm sure there's breakdowns with you and your wife, once in a while, maybe not. And maybe, even with your children, and I know you very well that I believe that those breakdowns are probably few and far in between, yet we're human beings, and life is life, right? So when you're looking at success, it's all about a perception. When you're looking at how can you take and be a teacher at heart and use that to be able to attract business, I remember I used to think making money in sales was about working harder. And then I realized it's not about working harder, it's about working smarter with a system. And once I figured that out, I never had a broke month again. It was just, the number one reason that salespeople fail isn't the market, it isn't their skills, it's their mindset. It's that nagging, I'm not good enough belief that holds them back. And everything for me changed when I let go of the excuses and committed to a system. And the system specifically for me was teach to sell. Was how can I educate the marketplace for real estate buyers and sellers at the time? How can I educate the marketplace for real estate sales professionals today? And how can I educate the marketplace for entrepreneurs, salespeople, and small business owners in the near future outside of real estate sales for them to have no broke months? How can I educate to be able to attract versus chasing? And it's just simply taking my own experience. And if you're new to business, you're new to sales, then be with a mentor, pair up with somebody who has some experience, because that's the only thing that you really can't get easily is experience, because it takes time. Okay, but you have experience no matter what. I'm coaching a guy right now who was in the airplane industry. He's a real estate agent now. For 20 years, he was in safety for airplanes, and I was able to coach him on. I'm like, and he thought, well, nothing I've done helps me for real estate sales. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, you've spent 20 years of your life keeping the flyers, the people in the airplanes, safe, right? Like, that's a pretty damn big thing. Like, you've made an impact in this world. So now how can we take what you've learned about keeping, in this case, Americans safe as we transport ourselves across the country or the world, and how can you take what you've learned over those 20 years and now apply it to a new industry? And that's just filling the gap. And that's where the gap is. It's about being a servant. It's about being a giver. And when you give, excuse me, the law of reciprocity suggests that other people will give back to you.
Dan, if you had to sum up this book in one sentence, I feel like the nuggets you've shared already, right? But if you had to say, like, this is about this, what would you say? What would be a way to describe to people what the core message that you're trying to deliver to people?
Yeah. Teach to Sell, I wrote it for the sales-driven entrepreneurs and highly motivated people who are really seeking to master their influence. So readers of the book, they're not just looking for sales tactics, but they want to be able to sell with integrity. They want to master the art of storytelling that converts, and they want to build a movement, around their mission. Teach to Sell, the one sentence that you're looking for, is a methodology that replaces traditional sales tactics with a process of guiding, teaching, and leading others to make empowered decisions. So instead of trying to, close people, you show them how to think so they can get what they want, and that positions you as a trusted expert that they're going to naturally follow.
Man. Folks, go back and listen to that. We're going to highlight that in the transcript. That was absolutely beautiful. By the way, Dan had no idea the questions I was going to ask him coming in. He gave me the manuscript. We're having a good time. So he's on the hot seat here a little bit. He's absolutely crushing it, right? Absolutely mastered these. So I'm loving your answers here. One thing that I was curious coming into this, you talk about permission-based selling.
Yeah.
Can you break that down for us a little bit? Like, what does it mean to have somebody or you engaging in that kind of selling?
Yeah, so permission-based selling is really, first of all, let's take a look at the word sales. All right, so the word sales, it has a negative connotation for many. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh, he's
what
trying to
is a
sell
used
me
car
something.
sales?
Yeah, like
You're trying to sell me something.
Yeah,
Used car
yeah.
sales. It's almost like you're manipulating.
Totally.
You're trying to get over on me, right?
Yeah.
Like so. For many, sales is a word with a negative connotation. Unfortunately, now you and I, as sales professionals, as entrepreneurs, as business people, we certainly don't have that, that perception. Yet the general marketplace sometimes does. And so when you recognize that that's the starting point, people may perceive you as a salesperson, an entrepreneur, a small business owner, as somebody that's trying to get over on somebody or something that's negative in some sort of capacity. Then the permission-based philosophies are, instead of me intending to convince you to do something, how can I show you the pathway To be able to show somebody the pathway, there's 3 steps that I talk about to be able to do that. And the 3 steps I sum up in the book is called the CPI communication model. And I'm going to break that down into 3 moves. First, connect energetically. See, most people, they fake rapport, a forced smile, a quick handshake, and it doesn't work. Rapport is presence. There was a French philosopher and priest from the early 1900s, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, that taught we are spiritual beings in a human manifestation. When you understand that, and when you connect with someone at a spiritual level, you feel it, they feel it instantly. And that's rapport. Rapport is the moment that trust begins before the conversation even starts. So now that we've connected energetically, we next ask adept questions. See, most people think that influence comes from having the right answers, and that's why they lose it. It comes from asking the right questions. Adept questions don't just scratch the surface, they go deeper. They help people uncover what they really want, and sometimes to help people to admit things that they're afraid to do so. And so when you ask an adept question that kind of makes someone pause, look up, really think, that's when trust deepens. And so first, to remind you, it's to connect energetically, and then it's to ask adept questions, and then finally, it's to actively listen. Because too many people nod along while their mind races ahead. They're thinking about, what am I going to say next? And that's not listening. That's waiting to talk. Listening is presence. It's tuning in not just to the words, but to the energy behind them. And when you listen that way, people feel it. They feel seen. They feel safe. And that kind of listening doesn't just build trust, it elevates it. And in that moment, influence isn't something you chase, it's something that you're given. Permission-based selling is incorporating what I just shared with you in a way to be able to really understand the other person's intentions, motivations, needs, wants, desires, challenges, and then be able to communicate with them in a way that's deep and meaningful, asking them the adept questions, and guiding them to a solution, which is very different than where we started, that used car salesperson.
So different. Boy, I could feel the difference when you describe that. This isn't a series of tactics, folks. Like, here's how to make people think that you're trustworthy, right? Or here's like this is just genuine human connection, right? Actually listening, actually caring about what they say, and actually wanting to help them get what they want to accomplish in life. And I think that type of authenticity is becoming more and more rare, right? In a world where we craft the narrative that we want others to believe about us through social media, that when you get knee to knee with somebody, even in a virtual setting like this, and you get them to open up and you truly listen, and you're not just following a script because that's what it says next, but you actually care about what they say, and you're fluid about where they want that conversation to go, to really express what their desires are. It's just such a different experience, and I would say it's becoming more and more rare, especially in an attention deficit society where we're so attached to screens, that to really give somebody your presence is going to be one of the most valuable and highly valued skill sets that I believe that will be out there. Right?
Justin, so, let me expand on that real quick though. This is like, why does this matter now? Right? Today, the influence gap, that gap that you talk about, it's everywhere. It's between leaders and teams, it's within families, it's in politics. We've completely stopped listening at all together in politics, right? And now, with artificial intelligence that's shaping the way we see the world, what we read, what we hear, it's really easy for us to mistake polished information for real human connection. And the reality of it is AI can produce perfect information, but it can't care. It can't look you in the eyes and see you. It can't cross the gap where trust lives. Technology can give you data, but only humans can give you trust. And the danger is, if we outsource our connection to machines, we'll wake up in a world where we know more about each other, yet be as lonely as can be. And that's the reason why it's so vital right now for your audience to be able to understand that there's another way to do business. There's another way to be able to make connections. There's another way to empathetically listen. And, the book Teach to Sell outlines that for them.
Beautifully said, Dan. Beautifully said. I know, throughout your book, you emphasize the importance of asking good questions. What are some of your favorite questions that consistently help people open up?
So, an example of a depth question would be, so there's wide questions, and then there's deep questions. So the wide questions are going to be your surface level questions. Let's say that you're a car salesperson. Do you want to buy a car? Yes. What color? Green. What kind? I don't know, Tesla. And these are all surface level questions. They're information gathering. And then there's deep level questioning. All right. And so to answer your question, it's the deep questioning that matters. It's chunking it down, which is, well, tell me what's important to you about that. How will that make you feel when you solve that problem? How will that make you feel when you achieve that goal? When you achieve that, how will that impact your life? Tell me more about that. Ultimately, what does that accomplish for you, your family, and those that you love? It's going deeper. See, we get a lot of times we get the logistics. Going back to the car analogy. Let's say it's a Tesla. That's one of my dreams. I want to buy a Tesla. I want to do the really expensive one, right? And I want to pay all cash for it. That's one of my intentions. But if you actually got me to be honest with you about what's important to a Tesla, is it better than the current car that I drive right now? Yeah, it is. But really, is that why I want to buy that Tesla? Or is it that I want to feel validated? I want to feel worthy, right? Like I want to feel like I've accomplished something in life that I can pay cash for a toy. It's not completely a toy. I mean, it has it has use and need. It has utility, but it's not going to get me to my destination any better than my current vehicle does. So when you ask the questions to really truly find out that deep, meaningful desire of like, man, like this guy wants to do this to prove to himself because he grew up in a poor household that he could barely make ends meet, and he wants to do this just so he can tell himself that he's freaking good enough. Now, imagine you're the salesperson. How much more effective can you be able to influence when you know that your consumer's viewpoint is to feel worthy versus I want a green neon pink Tesla. I'm making up colors now, right? And so that's the types of questions that I advise for your listeners and audience to consider.
So good, Dan. It's interesting as you were walking through those questions, I pictured for just a moment me sitting across the table from you and you asking me those questions. And I think there's a certain feeling that comes into a conversation when somebody cares enough to not just check the boxes of what would you like to order today, almost as if you're standing at a fast food restaurant, right? Okay, would you like fries with that? It's just like the basic, I check the boxes that I ask all the questions. But it's more about what you said, getting to the why behind why they want those decisions and the feeling that those decisions will make. And I think that's where a lot of people who, again, are lumped into maybe the traditional, less popular salespeople is because it feels like you're just reading a script to get them to say yes. You're essentially trying to force them to where you want them to go. Whereas the feeling that I got as you were explaining that to me is that you wanted to genuinely know what I wanted. You genuinely cared about what was important to me and why. And all of a sudden I felt trust, as you described before. I felt you come in and say, I want to know where you're at so I can lead you to where you want to go, right? And that feeling is very different. That feeling is very validating. You feel like somebody actually cares. And I'll say this, it's so rare that no one, I would argue very few people, if ever, have asked me those kinds of questions and cared enough to actually listen, that all of a sudden you enter into a very rare position in my life that most people never into, like never enter into, whether you're leading me in your organization, whether you are leading me in a transaction. Like very few people care enough to go that deep. And so those who do, there's immediate complete trust, right? Not just for you, but I want to get my friends in contact with you. Like, this is the guy, this is the gal who cares. They will take care of you, right? And it's not like it takes so much of extra time, right? And I would imagine that, Dan, when you're on the other side of that and you're asked those kinds of questions, how much more gratifying is your career when you actually get to go deep and learn all of those additional things?
Oh, it's amazing because what I'm able to do is I'm able to help the guy, as a real estate sales professional, for example. I'm able to help the guy that just got divorced and wants to be able to get a one-bedroom condominium in a certain school district. Now that surface level. But and this is an example, I just closed this last week. And when I met this gentleman, I was a little bit perplexed about, about his intentions. It didn't quite make sense to me. He's a very, very well-off gentleman, and he wants a one-bedroom condominium. This guy can afford whatever he wants. And I'm like, tell me more about that. And what I discovered was that he wanted to be able to make sure that his young daughter, that his location, his physical proximity was in the same school district as her, because his wife, his ex-wife, has full-time custody of their daughter, and he wants to be a father to that young lady, and he's afraid that if he goes into a different proximity, that's gonna hurt his ability to be able to have control, to have influence. Okay, so here's a situation that as a sales professional, if I didn't take the time to dig deep, I never would have known ultimately what was important to him. And because I did take the time, now I've got a satisfaction like, man, here's a 12-year-old young lady who, I don't know the ex-wife. I know the guy. I like her. I don't know him, like as best friends. I don't know him intimately, right? But I know him well enough. I have a good impression of him. And I believe that he's going to be able to provide for that young lady something more, because he's being thoughtful about what he's doing in his life to be there as a dad. And if I had a little piece of that for myself, then that's rewarding. That's all I need. And I got that because I dug deep on those questions.
I don't know if this is what you meant from this, but this is what I understood. Is that, yes, you get bought in to what he wants. All of a sudden, it's like, this is much bigger than just a house in a particular area. This is you being a father to a daughter. Like, whoa, right? Absolutely. And you know firsthand, Dan, what that feels like to be a father to a daughter, right? Because you're a fantastic one. And so all of a sudden, you're bought into that, but it's almost as if you helped him to uncover and discover things that maybe he hadn't even realized yet.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You mentioned before, Justin, about trust, and I wanna bring your listeners through a little exercise to really understand how this works. And I'm gonna invite for your viewership, your listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I want you to remember your favorite teacher, your favorite coach, your favorite guide. Close your eyes for a moment if you can. Think back. See their face. Hear their voice. Feel the way you felt when they believed in you. Now open your eyes and imagine that person walked into your life today and they gave you advice. You follow it, right?
Totally.
Because
I'm all ears.
they earned your trust.
Yeah.
That's teach to sell.
That's beautiful, Dan.
Thank you.
You've written a book that helps people to create that kind of impact and influence in people's lives. Man, this is needed in today's world, right? We live in this quote unquote influencer society where people are Insta famous but they don't have this kind of impact, right? I would argue that that's maybe false or hollow or maybe initial influence, whereas real influence is where you can step into someone's life at that level because
And
you've
make a
earned it,
difference.
right?
Yeah, and make a
Yeah,
difference. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, you could be seen. You can be seen by millions of people. Social media, like you can be, Justin can be seen, Dan can be seen. We can all be seen, and we can make a surface level impact. You know, we can inspire, we can motivate, but ultimately, when you understand that we all, as human beings, want love, many of us feel as though if we're not worthy, we struggle internally. We have this outside voice, this outside face, you know, like what I talked about with the perceived success, that is sometimes not authentic, though it can be authentic and inauthentic simultaneously, right? More than one thing can be true. That's the complexity of life. Yet, if you really want to make an impact on somebody's world, it's about appealing to those needs, to the love, to the worthiness, to the helpfulness, helping them to struggle less. And that's the map that I give in Teach to Sell in the book that I authored.
Dan, a couple of just final questions here. Somebody who's listening today and they've taken away some nuggets, right? They're like, ooh, I like that. What would you want them to do differently and feel differently after internalizing some of what we talked about today? What would be your hope for them?
Yeah, I want to go back and I'll say it briefly. I gave you a model before, the CPI communication model. I'll remind you to connect energetically, ask adept questions, actively listen. And for your viewer, for your listenership, if you can take and intend to implement that strategy into your life, not just in sales, but in life, then I promise you, you'll have a more fulfilling, rewarding life. I promise you, you'll make more sales. I promise you, you'll be on the path to having consistent, predictable income so that you no longer have a broke month ever again. And it's just simply implementing that simple system: connect energetically, ask adept questions, actively listen.
Seems so simple, Dan. And it probably is. We probably overcomplicate things, right?
Well, I think we do. I think the problem is that is as human beings we want to make things more complicated, or we don't want to, or we may or may not be able to, to be able to really consider, how simple things can be. And if your listeners want to get a copy of the book, if you order it in the pre-order, you will be the first one to get the copy. You'll also get a whole bunch of electronic swag, including 11 Ways to Believe in Yourself, the Jedi Mind Persuasion, the Work-Life Balance worksheets, and how to eliminate the unknown. I got a whole bunch of really cool electronic swag stuff. If they visit www.teachtosellbook.com.
Guys, go there. I think you probably all recognize by now that there's no mystery why Dan Rochon sells so much real estate, right? And does it by maintaining the heart of a teacher. And I think that so many get in this industry and get a bit disillusioned by some of the tactics that are taught when they really came in to serve. They really came in to really influence people's lives in a big way. And the way that they are taught to go about it feels contradictory to that. And I would say in many cases it is. And when you can embrace what Dan is teaching here, not only will you be aligned and aligned with your own DNA of why you started this career, not just in real estate, but any career in which you're able to lead people through sales. You can stay true to that and probably break every record you ever thought possible, because it's going to be so rare for you to show up in people's lives as Dan's taught us how to do today. Dan, always such a pleasure. Yeah, go.
Thank you. And lastly, you can make an impact. You can help people. You can make a freaking difference. So yeah, the sales are great, but guess what? We only have one life, as far as I know, and I'm I'm pretty damn intentional to make the best out of this life and help as many people as I can possibly help. And I invite for you to do the same.
Dan, that is why I love spending time with you. You are a big thinker, which for those that are maybe new to the show, the definition of think bigger is building successful businesses and significant lives. And Dan just gave us a recipe to doing that. Right? It's not just about making more money. It's about making more impact in the lives of people, truly being significant. So, Dan, appreciate it very much, my friend. It's a pleasure to have you on. And for those of you, again, that want to be in Dan's world, and I would recommend that everybody listening here today should be in Dan's world. He's going to influence you and impact you in significant ways. Again, go to teachtosell.com, and you'll find opportunities there to walk away with some things even before the book is released. So, Dan, such a pleasure, and I look forward to talking to you soon, my friend.
Thank you.